We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
Hello and welcome back to Resist 47. Today I want to talk about a topic that is really near and dear to my heart, and that's public education and what I believe is MAGA, Trump, Republican Party declaring war on public education. This really isn't anything new, and it's something, Republicans have been talking about, like getting rid of the Department of Education for quite some time. So in that sense, what Trump is talking about doing, getting rid of the Department of Education, isn't anything new. But the temper and the tempo and the thoroughness and the acrimony involved in the current MAGA war on education is new. And that really struck me recently when I was in an exchange on Threads with, a person who was determined and confident that we could put cameras in public school classrooms so that parents could watch their students all the time. Now, at first I thought, well, this is, a parent who wants to keep their child safe. But it wasn't. It's a parent who wants to watch the teacher to make sure the teacher isn't indoctrinating the students. Now, I pointed out this violates rights of privacy, and we got into a discussion about that. But what struck me is how committed he was to the idea that public school teachers are indoctrinating students into some kind of woke ideology, some kind of anti-American ideology. And as a public school teacher, as someone who, just retired in 2020, I haven't been out of the profession all that long. And as someone who taught for 31 years, I can guarantee you that almost no teacher has time to try to indoctrinate your student to become transgender, to, become woke or any of those kinds of things because they're too busy actually trying to teach their subject. But people like this guy I had this exchange with truly believe it. They truly believe that schools are hosting, drag time story hours left and right, that schools are teaching kids that, values that they don't believe in, that schools are teaching kids to hate America. And the fact that that kind of propaganda works so much is kind of terrifying to me. And so what I believe is then that we see this kind of right-wing war on public education really ramping back up. It started with a whole mess with CRT, where even the guy, that's critical race theory, even the guy who started the anti-critical race theory movement in Florida has admitted that it wasn't an issue. But this convinced many people that schools were teaching kids critical race theory. When in reality, they are not. Teaching kids about slavery is not critical race theory. Teaching kids about the economic importance of slavery in colonial and, the federal period of American history, that's not critical race theory. That's just history. But this guy created this as an issue specifically so he could get people fired up, rile people up, and get them to vote for conservative candidates who just simply had to come out and say they were against critical race theory. And the end result of that in places like Florida and Texas and other states is that curriculum is being rewritten to make it so the history of the United States and slavery is watered down, makes it seem like it's not so bad, when in reality it was horrible beyond all of our imaginations. And I'm not saying you have to teach that to kids in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, but at some point, allowing kids to have a realistic view of slavery in its past is important. Not to mention the value, I think, in teaching kids that the United States overcame one of its biggest problems of slavery. And yes, it was a terrible war. And yes, the problems that were left over with racism still exist, but that we can overcome big problems. That is a very pro-America story, if you asked me. And the fact that we continue, hopefully, to struggle in that direction is a pro-American story. So there was that. Then we have all the book bannings, all the idea that kids shouldn't have, that certain books shouldn't be in the library, that teachers shouldn't be assigning certain books, which kind of strikes me as funny because, I swear after the first Trump after the first Trump election, that, Trumpers looked at everybody as snowflakes because they couldn't read books, or they wouldn't read these books, or they needed these safe spaces. And now we see Trumpers, MAGA, calling for the same things, that libraries shouldn't have any books about LGBTQ experiences, that all of those are, being handed out to third graders. And that's why we see the increase in, the number of kids saying they're trans, etc. And this is all just patently ridiculous. this is one of those situations which, I think is also common in the MAGA movement, where they don't trust experts, where they preach this distrust of experts. And the truth of the matter is that school librarians and school officials are experts in what books belong in certain places to some kids. Now, in the whole United States of America, 360 million people, more than 100 million kids going to public schools. Are there going to be examples of books that have their libraries, school libraries, that might have a book which is inappropriate for the age group? I think yes. But that is something to be taken up with the school and with those professionals, not taken up as a national issue, which it's become. And book banning in general is an authoritarian move. Second, or third, is we see this movement here in Texas. The Texas state government just adopted, or Texas State Board of Education just adopted what they're calling the Bluebonnet curriculum, which actually uses the Bible to teach lessons. Not necessarily religious lessons, but it uses the Bible as kind of the foundation for teaching lessons, which have, a moral or a civic purpose. We see the guy in Oklahoma who's claiming to put a Bible in the hands of in every classroom or in the hands of every student. This push to put the Ten Commandments up in every classroom, which, there's already been a Supreme Court case about this, which, that law or that would clearly violate it. It remains to be seen what the Supreme Court will do in this case. But these are all efforts then to turn public schools into these untenable situations in which schools face lawsuits all the time from people who don't want their kids to be exposed to Christianity or to feel like they're having Christianity forced on them, which is actually what the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment tries to prevent by having this religious instruction in their kids. This will cost schools money. It will result in lawsuits. It's resources being spent on something that's not necessary. If you're worried about this issue of prayer and religion in schools, let me just reassure you, your child can pray in school whenever they want to. Your child can pray in school whenever they want to, because last I checked, the Bible suggests that we should pray quietly and to ourselves, and that we shouldn't make a show of our prayer. I believe Jesus said that quite specifically. And so your child is free to sit in their desk and pray before a test, after a test, before a sporting event, before they go to lunch, whatever it was, they can do that. Prayer is not illegal in public school, nor are religious-based clubs. That's been since the 80s, I think, in the Weber decision, where religious-based clubs are allowed to meet on school campuses. So the idea that we don't have religion in schools is ridiculous. The idea that your kid can't pray in school is ridiculous. And what these people really want is to have their religious ideas forced on other people, which the Constitution more or less directly contradicts. And I think the goal of that isn't so much, religious education, isn't so much, moral, raising up the morality or the morals of kids. It's to make the work of public schools increasingly or even more impossible. We also seen the growth of the homeschooling movement. Now, I'm going to say right up front, I was a public school teacher for 31 years. Not once did I get mad because a parent decided they wanted to homeschool their kid. Public educators don't get mad because parents want to homeschool their kid. If you want to homeschool your kid, great. I know several people who've homeschooled their kids and it's worked out wonderfully for everybody. So I have nothing against homeschool. I have nothing against sending your kid to private school. But here's the problem. The voucher system that is being pushed in states like mine in Texas would take tax dollars from public schools and give it to parents who want to homeschool or send their kid to private school. That's not okay, because public schools, the money you pay in taxes to a public school are not tuition. You're not paying your child's tuition. You are paying for the creation of a public institution that's a public good, that provides a public service. So just like I can't decide I want to get a refund on all my taxes that go to pay for city parks because I don't use city parks, you can't get your tax money back because your kid doesn't go to public school. You made that choice. That's fine. That's great. But your taxes are still necessary to maintain public schools because public schools are a public good. They provide a service to the public. We decided a long time ago, and it's true, that citizens of democracy need to be educated about their country's history and about the way in which the system of government works, good and bad. We need to know these things, because if we don't know these things, then we might vote for somebody who is, in the past, has actively tried to destroy that system and who is a threat to that system right now. The less educated we are, the less real information we have, the less foundation of civic education we have in the United States, the more likely we are to elect a tyrant. Additionally, we know that education is a step on the ladder towards middle class status, that the more educated you are, the more likely you are to make more money and therefore to move into the middle class. Now, strictly speaking, within a capitalist system, that middle class should be incredibly important, but we've seen nothing but the shrinking of the middle class really since the 1980s. And the reason why the middle class is shrinking is because tax cuts and government spending are going more and more to the wealthy and benefiting the middle class less, and we've seen the accumulation of increasing amounts of wealth by people like Elon Musk and Trump and Peter Thiel and others have been increasing the amount of money they get, and that means the middle class is shrinking. The middle class is shrinking, the wealthy are getting more money, and the poor or the working classes are growing. This is a threat to our democracy. This is a threat to our system. It's a threat to capitalism, to be honest with you. And I'll get back to this in just a minute. And we've seen the last element of the war on education we've seen is Trump's vow to destroy the Department of Education, to get down to where I think he just said one person at a desk answering the phone, making sure the laws were enforced. Now, how one person is going to make sure that all the laws, education laws in the United States are enforced in every single school district across the United States is ludicrous on the face of it, which means that Trump fully intends that none of those education laws will be enforced. None of the education laws which say that, you know, if your child has special needs, that there are programs and the schools have to create programs, have teachers to help them. Those will go away. One of the things that amused me about this conversation, not amused me, but saddened me about this conversation that I was having with this guy who wanted to put the cameras in schools was that his child has special needs, and yet he voted for and was confident that Trump would make everything okay, even though Trump has vowed to take away a program that his son depends on for his education. That's how powerful this propaganda is. And what we see then is this kind of accumulation of hits, blows, attacks on public education. And that it should be scary to all of us. That should be a problem for all of us, because public education is really one of those things that we decided long ago was important for our democracy. Oligarchs, potential oligarchs, who want to create their own form of feudalism, which there's just a few rich people at the top and everybody else is kind of collected at the bottom. Notice this is a byproduct of a shrinking middle class. Those oligarchs don't care anything about public schools. Their kids are going to be fine. Their kids are going to inherit money. Their kids are going to get to keep going to college. They don't care about how big college debt is or how much college costs, because they'll be able to pay for it. And as a matter of fact, not paying off student debt, creating higher student debt, creating higher tuition serves the oligarchs well, because it helps to shrink the middle class even more. Just as destroying public schools will help shrink the middle class even more. And that's what these wealthy oligarchs want. That's why they're going after public schools. Their kids aren't in public schools. They don't care about public schools at all. They're going after public schools because what it will mean for them politically and economically. A shrinking middle class increases the wealth of the wealthy, and that middle class cannot act as a check on the abuses of the wealthy. Additionally, you know, as Trump said at the beginning, he loves the poorly educated, because the poorly educated are much more likely to vote for authoritarianism, because they don't have the grounding in the true history of the United States, or in the civics and the way in which the system was created and how it was supposed to work and what's supposed to be true. They're more likely to vote for authoritarianism. This is particularly true among Christian nationalists who are convinced that the United States was founded based on Christian ideas, to which there is very little truth. If, for instance, if in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson was intending to make a reference to the Christian God, why didn't he call him God instead of saying we're endowed by our Creator? Why did he use this generic term rather than a specific term? Because he didn't want it to be read that we were being found, that we were, you know, part of our foundation would be as a Christian nation. You cannot find references to Christianity in the Constitution, which is the actual governing document of the United States. And where there is a reference to religion, it's always a prohibition against the government requiring religious practice. So when we see Christian nationalists get on board with this war on education, what they really want to do is to create a Christian authoritarianism in the United States. And to do that, they have to get us to go along with destroying the Constitution, destroying the First Amendment, which is all would be easier if we have less education. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for listening to my ramble and rant about the MAGA war on public education. Continue to contact your senators to oppose these ridiculous cabinet appointees and high-level appointees that Trump has come up with. That's the first step to preserving our democracy, is getting enough senators to oppose, corrupt, dangerous, completely unqualified people to be in high-level, high-ranking positions in the United States government. And that's something we can do right now. In terms of public education, get involved in public education on the local level to fight against these efforts to create Christian nationalism in our public schools, to make our public schools factories for turning out people who are going to be okay with authoritarianism. Oppose those measures, and you will help to grow the middle class, and you will help to reduce the power of the wealthy oligarchs, and you will return the United States to to the path it should have been on, or it should still be on. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching. Look forward to your comments in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you for watching.